Here's your buddy Carney. See what he's got to say.
How do you reconcile keeping Bill C-69 with your plans to build infrastructure in Canada? Do you plan to repeal Bill C-69?
We do not plan to repeal Bill 69, to answer your question directly. What we have said and made very clear 10 days ago, formally with the First Minister's meeting, is that we will move for projects of national interest to remove duplication in terms of environmental assessments and other approvals. And we will follow, as the federal government, the principle of one project, one approval to move forward from that. And so what's essential is to work at this time of crisis to come together as a nation, all levels of government, to focus on those projects that are going to make material differences to our country, to Canadian workers, and to our future, and work closely together. And the federal government is looking to lead with that by saying we will accept provincial environmental assessments to move forward with that for example, clean energy projects or conventional energy projects. There are many others that could be there. Last point, which in many respects is the first point, we will always ensure that these projects move forward in partnership
with First Nations, he says there. I don't know why that clip went to crap, but did it do it for you too, or is that just for me?
Yeah, it's for me too. Yeah.
For you too. Okay, so that's Carney saying he won't repeal Bill C-69. Let's just go through some of that stuff, that the highlights from Bill 69. So the act expands assessments to include social, economic, gender-based, health, and climate change effects. That's nice. This allows for open and challenges and delays, as virtually any group can argue a project's impact on abstract concepts like gender equity or climate goals. The Minister of Environment has broad discretion. This is why they won't repeal 69. This is exactly why he says, we might fast track this and that, but we won't repeal it, is because it gives the Minister of Environment, aka the federal government, broad powers to decide what gets assessed, intervene in the review process, and determine whether a project is public in the public interest. So it weakens the voices of the province's industry experts and local stakeholders. Under Bill C-69, any person or group, regardless of proximity or expertise, can participate in reviews and launch legal challenges. Projects must account for Canada's climate commitments under the Paris Agreement, including life cycle emissions, not just local, but global.
Yeah.
This means even clean burning LNG projects, which could reduce global emissions by displacing coal, can be denied if their net impact doesn't align with ideological climate targets.
And what if they're wrong? I mean, what if they're wrong about what's clean and what's not? I mean, we've seen this with the windmills already and solar and all this stuff that's supposed to be the best, and it's not turning out to be.
So even if a project is Indigenous-led, environmentally sound, and economically critical, Bill C-69 creates a gauntlet of unpredictable, ideological, and ever-expanding hurdles that effectively hands veto power to federal politicians, activist groups, foreign interests, or bureaucrats with no stake in local prosperity. No investor wants to spend billions, only be denied by a shifting goalpost. So why is that important? Why is it? Because he's not going to repeal it. So he doesn't want to do any of this stuff in Canada. But we jump over to here. And this is from a while ago, but they just bought this pipeline here. This is because I think they closed on one in the States just at the end of last year as well for $10 billion. Here's another pipeline Brookfield bought for $13.5 billion. And then let's jump over. Now I'm going to stop sharing this and start sharing this. So this is Brookfield's
Brookfield?
Brookfield. I shared the wrong thing again. Okay, let's see. I need to share this window. Let's go through. Wait a second. Where'd it go?
I don't know.
It's not showing up here. Oh, there. Now it is. Okay, so let's go to here then. So this is Brookfield Infrastructure Partners, November 2022 report. So this is the shareholders report, I believe, the corporate profile shareholders report. What do you think we're going to find in here?
I don't know, that they're investing in oil and gas all over the world except for Canada.
I think that's probably a pretty safe bet. So let's come down here through their agenda, blah, blah, blah. Introduction to investment highlights. Okay, so here we are. Brookfield Infrastructure owns high quality, long life assets that provide essential products and services for essential. They're essential everywhere else, just not here. Essential products and services for the global economy. Utilities, 16.2 thousand kilometers. So that'd be about 10,000 miles of natural gas pipelines. 65,000 kilometers of operational electricity distribution and transmission lines. 7.7 million electricity and natural gas connections. 1.6 million smart meters installed. 32,000 kilometers of rail operations. 3,800 kilometers of toll roads. 15,000 kilometers of natural gas transmission pipelines, which is as much as they had everywhere else. I don't know if that's in addition to the other stuff. 600 billion cubic feet of natural gas storage. A lot of natural gas stuff here. You noticing that? You'd think they went all in on Canada's, but let's keep going. 17 natural gas and natural gas liquid processing plants and 3,400 kilometers of gas gathering pipelines. 3,300 kilometers of long-haul pipelines and 3,900 kilometers of conventional pipelines. And 165,000 operational telecom towers and active rooftop sites. That'll be all your cell stuff. 268,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable. All sorts of cool stuff.
Oh, hang on. Go back to that graph there.
This one, that's just their
No, the other one. That one, yeah.
So, yeah, that's their stock growth, I think.
Okay.
Let's go down to here. So private investors are essential in addressing the global infrastructure funding gap. Historically, governments and utility companies provided most of this infrastructure. So we don't need to get into that. Let's go down here a little bit more. So ESG, environmental and social governance principles at Brookfield. One is mitigate the impact of our operations on the environment. So let's go down on how they're doing that in action. I want to start with this one right over here, because we did that slash and sell story about them being in court for slave labor and destroying a couple thousand acres of Amazon rainforest. But here says on the report that they're actually working to restore more than 1,000 hectares of rainforest in Brazil, not destroying it, with 554 done to date. So,
well, yeah, you have to destroy it to rebuild it, right? So, I mean,
they recently announced a partnership with the Intel Corporation to build a $30 billion semiconductor foundry in Arizona.
wow.
Yeah, but we're threatening to stop sending semiconductors right now from Canada. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, his company is building a semiconductor factory. I mean, it would make sense that you wouldn't want Canadian companies competing with your Brookfield in their new factory to build semiconductors down in Arizona. Just saying. Comes across as kind of sketchy, right?
No wonder why he doesn't want to talk about his conflicts of interest.
Exactly. They just acquired another 36,000 telecom towers in Germany and Austria. Announced their intention to acquire and privatize HomeServe, a provider of subscription-based recurring home repair policies for homeowners in North America and Europe.
Oh boy, that sounds super sketchy.
It don't sound good. So the 3Ds, digitalization, invest in opportunities derived from exponential increase in data consumption, decarbonization, utility or residential energy infrastructure investments to reduce or eliminate emissions, and support the reshoring. Deglobalization supports the reshoring of essential and strategic manufacturing processes and supply chains. So this just kind of goes through. They got 4,200 kilometers of natural gas pipelines in North America, South America, and India, 5,300 kilometers of transmission lines in Brazil, 61,000 kilometers of electricity distribution. There's the smart meters again. Smart meters. Diversified terminals, 30 million tons per annum of LNG export terminal in the U.S. and 85 million tons per annum of an exported out of Australia. I mean, Brookfield is exporting all sorts
But
of,
not Canada. But why not Canada?
but not Canada. So 15,000 kilometers of transmission pipelines in the U.S., 600 billion cubic feet of natural gas storage in the U.S. and Canada, gas gathering pipelines in the U.S. and Canada, and conventional pipelines. 154,000 telecom towers in India, 8,000 towers and active rooftop sites in France, 1,600 cell sites in New Zealand, 2,100 active telecom towers. I mean, these guys are globalization. It's crazy.
Oh, they said they were deglobalizing, though.
2,100 telecom towers and distributed antenna systems in the UK, and 246,000 fiber to premise connections in Australia. They're deglobalizing like crazy. Okay. So that aside, why does that matter? So, I mean, you know who else makes a bunch of natural gas? Oh no, I didn't switch it fast enough.
Who?
Is Qatar. Qatar is a significant competitor to Canada in the global liquefied natural gas market. Qatar has been a leading LNG exporter and is undertaking substantial expansion plans to increase its production capacity. The Northfield expansion project aims to boost Qatar's LNG production to 142 million tons per annum by 2030, potentially capturing nearly 25% of the global market share. Canada is also working to blah, blah, blah. In summary, Qatar's aggressive LNG expansion positions it as a formal competitor to Canada's emerging LNG industry. The Qatar Investment Authority, Qatar's sovereign wealth fund, has established a significant partnership with Brookfield Asset Management, a global investment firm through various collaborative ventures. The Manhattan West Development, QIA, acquired a 44% stake in Brookfield's $8.6 billion Manhattan West mixed-use development project in New York City. Canary Wharf Program, QIA and Brookfield jointly took control of London's Canary Wharf Group in April 2015 by acquiring Songbird Estates PLC, which owns 69% of Canary Wharf Group. One Manhattan West, March 2022, Brookfield and QIA sold a 49% stake in One Manhattan West, a 67-story office tower in New York. The transaction valued the building at $2.85 billion. In December 2014, QIA made a strategic investment of $1.8 billion in Brookfield Property Partners through the purchase of exchangeable preferred equity securities.
Oh, interesting.
The investment provided QIA with a significant stake in Brookfield's real estate operations. In October 2015, QIA, alongside China Life Insurance Company, acquired an 80% stake in 99 Bishopgate from Brookfield Property Partners. There's the Wharf one again. Okay.
Well, can I bring Trump in? Can I bring Trump into this?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring Trump in yet. I'm still gonna bring that in.
I have a bunch of bullets that I could share that fit right into what you're talking about.
Well, let me finish first. QIA has billions invested in Brookfield, including co-ownership of major global real estate projects and a significant historical stake in Brookfield Property Partners. If Brookfield is still leveraging Qatari capital or aligning future deals with QIA, it would be against their shared financial interest to have Canadian LNG undercutting Qatar's dominance. Canada's West Coast LNG could reach Asian markets faster and cheaper than shipments from the Persian Gulf. This is especially threatening as China, Japan, and South Korea would likely seek long-term contracts. Brookfield is not a nationalist Canadian firm. It is a global investment powerhouse. Its leadership, including figures like Mark Carney, a former central banker with globalist leanings, is more interested in maximizing global returns, not advancing Canadian sovereignty or energy independence. If the political class blocks or delays Canadian LNG, Brookfield's international investments, like in Qatar or the US, could stand to benefit from less competition and more stable demand for existing assets. So then we could jump over to here, which I think is at the top of this. I think I've actually got it at the top of this. So this is the, because everyone's wondering why is Trump, seems like Trump's trying to get Carney elected, right? I mean, it seems like so. Why could that be? Well, let's jump over here. Okay, 666 Fifth Avenue lease agreement. In August 2018, Brookfield acquired a 99-year lease on 666 Fifth Avenue, a Manhattan skyscraper owned by Kushner Companies, the family business of Jared Kushner. Brookfield paid approximately $1.1 billion upfront for the lease, allowing Kushner Companies to pay off substantial debts associated with the property. This deal attracted attention because the Qatar Investment Authority, QIA, Qatar's sovereign wealth fund, was a significant investor in Brookfield. The QIA held a substantial stake in Brookfield Property Partners, and the subsidiary involved in the transaction. Both Brookfield and QIA stated the QIA had no involvement in the Fifth Avenue deal. The U.S. Senate Finance Committee, led by Senator Ron Wyden, initiated an investigation into whether Jared Kushner's financial interests influenced U.S. foreign policy, particularly concerning the blockade of Qatar by other Gulf nations. In 2015, Jared Kushner purchased the 6 floors of the building at 229 West 43rd Street in Manhattan for $295 million. Nearly the entire purchase price was financed through loans from the Brookfield Asset Management. Kushner's plan was to lease the space to various entertainment venues to create an attraction near Times Square. This arrangement highlighted another financial connection between Kushner and Brookfield. So it seems like Trump.
And so Kushner is Ivanka's husband, right?
Kushner is Trump's son-in-law. Yes.
Yes. Just so everybody remembers the connection there. And did that talk about them paying for the 100-year lease up front, which is very rare and kind
of exactly to get. Oh no, I'm sharing the links in the wrong.
So should I interject with mine now, which just sort of will put a bit of a different spin on that? Or
yeah, well, I have a clip I can play too, but why don't you go first? Why don't we get you?
Okay, so this is just like from Trisha Wood. She was talking about how this is kind of coming in hot, and she can't wait on it any longer. Carney Trump loving looks dirty as hell. Editorial note: political trolls on social media, blah blah blah, trying to discredit the story. We say in caps in the story below, but as well with propaganda. The lie is in the twist. I've shortened it to fit the SS format better and fix some typos. So here it's complex, and I'm giving these short points up front so there's no confusion. Also, to be fair to all concerned. So here it is. Brookfield brokered a deal with the sitting president's son that includes money from country that is in play diplomatically in the Middle East. That deal has been massively controversial for Trump and Kushner, given that Kushner was running ME foreign policy for his father-in-law, so receiving $1 billion bailout from a country in that portfolio is not a good look. To learn more, don't Google Carney and Kushner, Google Qatar and Kushner. There are dozens of stories and some investigations about this iffy deal. How does Carney fit in if he came later? Because Carney came into Brookfield, I think, in 2020 or 2022, right? Do you remember?
I think 2020.
Later is when all the questions began being raised. When all of the questions began being raised, a U.S. Finance Committee looked into it, and other bad press happened while Carney was at Brookfield. The letter from the FC went to the Toronto office begging for information and decrying the fact Brookfield seemed to be stonewalling. Again, Carney was there for that and would be negligent to not have read the file to understand what his company was involved in. The point is, Carney would likely know all about what happened. Here's where we are now. 2 men, one of them president, whose family owes Brookfield a huge debt of gratitude, is oddly praising a foreign leader, Carney, who's been threatening him. Carney, who was around when the Kushner deal was exposed as a Qatari venture, in part, would have seen things in those files that could hurt the president's family and perhaps even Brookfield if made public. Leveraged against each other is still a conflict of interest. It means we can't be confident of interactions between Trump and Carney that are strictly in the interests of this country. Simply, would Trump help Carney win to keep him happy? How will Carney deal with what he knows about the Trump family? You'll note some people say not Qatari money because Apollo invested, except Apollo is Qatari money. I hope this helps. Off to pack for Ottawa. And then there's a Newsweek story here. There's some backup information. Now, I want to go to this as well because this can just sort of add another twist to it. Have you seen this article at all? From the Sean Newman podcast?
Not sure.
Two powerful men secretly orchestrated Canada's financial destiny for over a decade. So this will kind of blow you away, but there is an intersection here that fits in with what you're talking about. One was caught in a massive money laundering scandal. The other just became prime minister. No one's talking about their connection until now. So Frank McKenna, TD's bank deputy chair since 2006. Mark Carney, former Bank of England governor, and we all know as well Goldman Sachs and Bank of Canada. One stayed in boardrooms, the other now controls Canada's government. But they intersected at one crucial point that changed everything. Brookfield Asset Management. October 2024, TD Bank pleads guilty to money laundering, $3.1 billion in fines. So this is not too long ago, right? Like 5-6 months ago, where that other guy came from, right? While he was running it, they pled guilty.
That was the biggest fine in history.
The bank admitted helping drug cartels move dirty money for nearly a decade, all while McKenna was deputy chair, a position with direct oversight of bank risk and compliance. How does a deputy chair, one of the most senior positions, remain unaware of a decade-long criminal activity within his own bank? It's hard to imagine McKenna, a former premier and ambassador, didn't know something what was happening. But the story gets more interesting. Meanwhile, in 2020, yes, Mark Carney joins Brookfield Asset Management. Who's been chairman of Brookfield's board since 2010? Frank McKenna, the same TD Bank executive whose bank just got caught money laundering. Coincidence? Let's dig deeper. At Brookfield, McKenna and Carney formed a powerful alliance. McKenna, the board gatekeeper. Carney, the visionary pushing billions into green investments. Together, they reshaped one of the world's largest asset managers while cultivating political influence. There's a good picture of them right there. Think about this timeline. TD Bank laundering money during McKenna's watch. McKenna brings Carney to Brookfield. Carney becomes chair of Brookfield. Carney suddenly leaves to run for prime minister. McKenna publicly endorses him. Puzzle pieces start connecting. Carney's rise to prime minister in March 2025 seemed meteoric to most Canadians. But was it really? Or was it the culmination of years of careful positioning with McKenna pulling the strings from corporate boardrooms? The question we should be asking, did McKenna know about TD's money laundering? Was Carney's position at Brookfield a strategic stepping stone? Who really benefits from having a former central banker as PM? Why did Carney leave Brookfield so abruptly? So I think that's pretty good rundown there.
Yeah.
Hang on, one more thing. And their biggest shared agenda, actually, let me just back up here. Consider the unprecedented access these two now have. McKenna connected to TD Bank and Brookfield, Carney running Canada's government, a former banker and central banker now control both corporate policy and government policy. And their biggest shared agenda, the green transition, redirecting trillions from traditional industries into new sustainable investments. Funds that Brookfield is perfectly positioned to manage. Let's not forget. Okay, I don't want to go any further than that. I mean, that's a pretty good rundown, though. But I mean, to be honest with you, this whole green sort of money laundering thing is falling apart. With Trump and the USAID thing, like that's why I think that the USA is the only bulwark against this globalist sort of climate cartel. So how is that going to interact with Trump and Carney, and their past relationship? Because Trump seems to be dismantling it, unless it's all virtue signaling, but I don't think it is. I mean, they're really cutting. It's too late to go back and change it now that Elon and him have sort of uprooted this whole NGO funding web of corruption. So I don't know. How is Trump and Carney going to handle this? Like, what if like that's why Carney's in there? Like, what if, because otherwise Trump could dismantle it, but because Carney and Trump had this problem with the Kushner thing and all that, right? I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why he's in there, because then that protects the globalist network from being attacked by Trump.